Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be back recording after a little summer break. I was trying to soak up every bit of warm weather and sun that I could. I absolutely love being outside. It's my happy place, so I had to take advantage, and I know a lot of other people were out having fun, enjoying summer, so it was a good break to have. But now that we're kind of transitioning into fall, I want to get back in the groove of things with recording, so I'm just really excited to start that again. I feel like I've been reflecting a lot personally, and so I'm going through a lot of growing pains, I would say, and I feel like that's kind of how the 20s are, at least for me. I think it's interesting because the 20s are it's so different for everyone. There's not like a one size fits all. I've had to learn a lot of hard lessons and weed through a lot of the bad to get to the good. So, not sure if anyone else out there is feeling the same. And speaking of growing pains, I've had quite a few of them with the podcast and learning curves, but it's all good. So, I actually, in this break, I listened back to all the episodes I had recorded and put out there. And there was one episode where I kept using the wrong word, like I meant to say something else. I'm like, I wonder if people caught that. I find I say like too much sometimes. So for me, it was a time to kind of reflect on what I had put out there and just, give myself constructive criticism. And I am always 100% candid in admitting my faults. So hopefully my mess ups are your entertainment. And I had given the example before in my first episode about how when I tried setting up GarageBand, it was just this whole ordeal in production. One episode, I forgot some of my equipment, but luckily I was still able to record. One of them, the mics were too far apart, so the sound quality wasn't the best. I had to learn how to record over Zoom for the first time. The last one, I didn't press play, or I pressed play instead of record and talked for 30 minutes before realizing that I didn't have any of that material. And then recently I had a situation come up that was pretty disheartening and personal related to the podcast, and it kind of brought up some concerns and legal matters that I didn't really think of beforehand. So it really was a lesson. It was an unfortunate one, but it kind of zapped my creative juices there for a minute and motivation, and that's why I think having the break was also good. So yeah, but trials and tribulations, right? So I've just been really thankful to have this experience and connecting with people and having amazing conversations. They feed my soul, and I hope that they feed yours too. I've talked about finding your passion, how to get the good energy and vibes flowing around you and within you, modern dating, social media, metaphysics, esoteric topics like dreams, sleep paralysis, and navigating your 20s. So those are all real experiences that you and I live through every day. And I have this fear that I'm just going to run out of topics to discuss. But anyway, so transitioning, I feel like there's been a lot of heavy energy the last 2 months, I would say. I feel like things really shifted for me in July. And also, I know with friends and family, things haven't been going the greatest for them. So I do feel there's a lot of heavy, difficult energy with the collective right now. And from astrologers that I follow, Jupiter was in Pisces from like March to June, and that actually was a really great time. I released the podcast during that time. I There were so many social events. I felt like things were turning a corner with COVID, and Pisces does well in when it's in I'm sorry, Jupiter does well when it's in the sign of Pisces. Like that is just a good sign for that planet to be in. And then Jupiter retrograded into Aquarius in July. And so when a planet retrogrades, it appears that it's moving slower than it actually is. And a lot of times during a retrograde, like it's seen as something negative. I think a lot of times it is a more challenging aspect when the planet is in retrograde, but it's making us kind of pause and reflect, and it can bring up emotions and just a lot of different feelings, and how it aspects other planets can sometimes not be the best, but retrogrades are there for a reason. So Jupiter retrograded into Aquarius, I think around the beginning of July, and that's when I felt a shift globally and personally. We also have a big square between Saturn and Uranus. So with talking about aspects within the planets, you have trines, which are the best, sextiles, which is like the second best, oppositions, where things start to get a little bit not so great, and then squares being the worst. Even if there's difficult aspects within the planets, it's not always a bad thing, but it's just not going to be as harmonious as the trines and sextiles. So this year specifically, I know astrologers really emphasize this square between Saturn and Uranus, and Uranus is in Taurus, Saturn is in Aquarius. And so, based on that aspect between those two planets, that's actually why there's supply shortages. And, obviously that relates to COVID, and it's just kind of been increasing. As of right now, there's 5 planets in retrograde, and we're about to have 6 with Mercury. And so that'll retrograde starting September 27th until October 28th. So, about a month, we're going to have 6 planets. So, I find that within the next couple months, things are going to get a little bit more bumpy and tumultuous. Speaking of Mercury in retrograde, because that's the one that people probably hear of the most. So, Mercury is a planet associated with technology, communication, and siblings, but that's a time when you really need to double check paperwork, transactions, documents, the fine print, your travel information, and itineraries. They advise not to sign contracts or make big purchases because there's just more room for error. And also, this is where things get lost in translation and communication is affected between people. So, there may be more disagreements, text messages that didn't send. So, again, just be prepared for that. I find astrology really does predict a lot in its own way. And so, right now, they're talking about how the US is experiencing its Pluto return. And so, a return is when a planet completes like its cycle in one sign, and Pluto being the furthest planet out. And I know some people are going to be like, yeah, well, according to NASA, it's not a planet anymore. That's a whole other topic of discussion that I'm not going to get into. So anyways, Pluto is associated with death, destruction, rebirth, and everything that's hidden. So it takes a while, like over 200 years, for this planet to complete its entire rotation. And when it does come into its return and completing that cycle, it's just gonna uproot a lot of things. So we have structural systems in place that are going to be uprooted in the forefront of what's happening globally. And so, as I mentioned, I definitely think we're in for some turbulence until the end of the year. And if you look at what's happening in the US, I mean, we just had a hurricane that hit Louisiana. There's issues happening in Afghanistan, the Delta variant, the fires in California. So history is repeating itself, and I would be intrigued to know how someone could argue that the aspects of the planets aren't influencing us on Earth, or obviously there's people who believe that astrology is not real, it's a pseudoscience, whatever. I always say to each their own, but there are no such thing as coincidences. So I have a really good feeling about 2022, though. I think it's going to be a turning point. I will be interested to see what the aspects of the planets are then. I personally feel like 2021 was kind of like a part 2 series of 2020. Like it wasn't as tumultuous, but there's still loose ends that need to be tied up. There's things that we have to kind of face and deal with in order to transition into this next phase. So I hope I didn't jinx myself by saying that 2022 is going to be better, but I really feel it in my gut that it will. So anyways, just some food for thought about kind of the energy that I've been feeling on a personal scale and globally with people I know as well. I don't think it's just me. There's also this app called Time Passages that I recommend, and it's one of my favorite astrology apps that I use because it gives you a good idea. It shows you like the current chart, so like what sign all the planets are in and how they're aspecting each other, so you can see the squares, the trines, but also what the current planets are in versus your own chart. So like even though Uranus is in Taurus, like you might have a different sign in Uranus, and so that aspect is going to affect each other, and so it gets really deep, but yeah, just kind of to expand more on that, I suppose, with astrology. Now, speaking of spirituality, I kind of want to jump into the next point that relates to it. So I think that everything comes to me in a matter of synchronicity and the law of attraction now. And I was sifting through Instagram and I found this newer podcast, like their Instagram account. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm not going to say the name of it, but it was started by two girls who actually live in Chicago or are from there. And they were like, we're a mix between Call Her Daddy and Girls Gotta Eat. So those are two of the most famous podcasts out there today. And I just felt like they were trying too hard to be something that already exists. So I was trying to go into it with an open mind, and I was, of course, stalking their Instagrams and falling down the rabbit hole. And I guess they live in LA now and are kind of wannabe influencers, but I was like, okay, let me listen to one of their episodes and give them a chance before I become too judgy, because I try not to do that. So the one that caught my attention, of course, was them talking about the different kinds of relationships that people have throughout a lifetime. And so there's this huge buzzword coin term floating around TikTok and Instagram now about twin flames. So I don't know how many people have heard of this, but basically they said the three relationships that you have in your life are twin flame, soulmate, and life partner. And they said that a twin flame is it's the toxic, all-consuming, passionate relationship that you have. It's where it's not good for you, but you stay in it, and the sex is good, or it's just very high highs and low lows. And that actually is super inaccurate. Like and I follow tons of spiritual accounts, and I really try to do my homework and research, and I don't just go to like one source and think, oh, this is it. I've talked to numerous psychics who are versed in this, and I can tell you right now that is not a twin flame relationship. A lot of times too, so they said twin flame, soulmate, and life partner. A lot of times your soulmate is your life partner. So I'm not really sure where they got their information from. So I want to elaborate specifically on twin flames, because I feel like everybody wants to have a twin flame. They think it is like that's what they think. It's like this all-consuming, like, passionate relationship, and they have to be with this person, and it's just they always like people just want someone to be their twin flame. They like the word, it's a buzzword, whatever. I get it. It would be ideal to like meet your twin flame, but let's really dive into what a twin flame is. So the definition that I found from Loner Wolf says that the purpose of the twin flame relationship is to help us shed away the snakeskin of the ego, face and heal our wounded hearts, and transform into spiritually awakened beings. Twin flames are a divine expression of balance, harmony, and unconditional love. Every twin flame couple will have a higher purpose to achieve together, and this may include anything from raising conscious children and starting an eco-conscious business to becoming spiritual guides and mentoring the lives of many. Contrary to popular belief, twin flames do not complete each other. This is because the soul itself is already complete. Instead, such relationships exist to catalyze spiritual maturing and conscious expansion. In other words, twin flame connections exist to aid the collective growth of our planet towards compassion, tranquility, and love. So, the twin flame concept says that your soul was split into two, and this other person shares the same soul as you, and you mirror each other. You're like almost opposites, but it's like a yin and yang. So it's like it's a good opposition. And with twin flames, like it is a very intense, passionate relationship. Like, I'm not saying it's not, because it is. It's the most intense relationship that you'll ever experience, and it's so rare. Like, most people are not going to meet their twin flame in this lifetime because they serve a higher purpose for humanity. So I hate to break it to people that really wanted to meet their twin flame in this lifetime, but more than likely it's not going to happen, because it awakens you spiritually and like ascends you to a different level of consciousness. And then at that point, the partnership or this union is supposed to raise the collective consciousness for humanity as well. So to give an example, like, I don't know how true this is, but I was trying to find examples of maybe people in relationships who are twin flames, and one of them said that they believed Johnny Cash and June Carter were, because they both were married when they met each other, and they had a runner and chaser phase. Obviously, they had this intense connection, but I think June was fighting it more, like, because there's a runner chaser phase in the relationship. So, like, one person is already kind of like the teacher and spiritually mature, and the other person is so scared of how intense this connection is that they run away. So, there's a runner and chaser phase where there's separation, and Johnny Cash was actually the one that was kind of like the chaser and like trying to convince June Carter that they were meant to be together, and they did. They actually left both their partners who they were married to, and they, lived happily ever after. But it wasn't easy, like, especially, I would have to do more research into the relationship, but obviously there was bumpy road to them being together. But what they did is they were meant to be together because they made music for people. That was their like higher purpose of them coming together. Same thing with John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Like, they really came together to demonstrate love in a time of war. And so it's not just this crazy romantic passionate relationship. The twin flame union is very rare. Like I said, most people are not going to experience it in this lifetime, and it serves a higher purpose for humanity. So I definitely wanted to elaborate on that more. And then obviously with soulmates, it's ideal to want to meet a soulmate in this lifetime. I think someone can have multiple soulmates, and it doesn't always have to be a romantic partner. It can be a friend, a family member, whoever, really. I don't think there's a one size fits all when it comes to this. There's just kind of more basic concepts, like the twin flames that I wanted to elaborate on. And then you have karmic relationships. Those are actually the ones that tend to be the passionate, all consuming, toxic ones, because karmic means that, like, they're there to teach you really hard lessons. Like, you're experiencing that hardship and difficulty for a reason. And I had a karmic relationship. I actually know this because that pattern app that I always talk about, there's a feature where you can link someone romantically, and it'll give you all this insight into the relationship and, your interactions together. And for the one that I had, it said past life karmic link. And so it was like, again, I believe in multiple lifetimes, so apparently we knew each other in a past life, and we had business to finish in this one, and it wasn't easy or fun. But again, it taught us about ourselves, and it really kind of opened up the wounds that needed to be healed, essentially. And so I believe a lot of relationships that we face more so are karmic. They're here to teach us about ourselves. And I think that if you're really curious to know more about what relationships you will experience in this lifetime, to seek out an astrologer or a psychic who is versed specifically in that. Like, Raven, who I had on a couple episodes ago, she's actually the one that kind of elaborated more on this, especially specifically with what relationships I was going to encounter. And so she said, you're going to have probably 3 main relationships in your life. She said the last one, that person will be your soulmate and who you end up with, and it's going to be a harmonious relationship. And soulmates are harmonious relationships. You bring out the best in each other. And so she's like, you're not going to meet your twin flame in this lifetime, but you will meet your soulmate, and it's going to be your life partner, and great. And I was like, awesome. Don't know when that will happen, but we'll see. And so again, if you're kind of more curious, to finding out about what relationships you will experience, talk to an astrologer or psychic, download the pattern app, do more research. Another thing, really quick, that I wanted to mention with twin flames and why that has become such like a popular thing on Instagram and TikTok and like a buzzword is because one, celebrities have started using it, and two, it's funny because from a lot of spiritual accounts that I follow, many psychics and astrologers have spoken out about how people use it as a way to justify a toxic relationship. They think just because, like with a twin flame relationship, yeah, it's definitely not easy. You have that runner chaser phase. It exposes everything about you. There are very tumultuous aspects, but at the end of the day, it's not toxic. Like that person is still good for you. So please don't confuse twin flame with a toxic relationship. Just something I felt was necessary to share in this episode because I really find the relationship types interesting, and I just want to make sure that there's not too much misinformation being spread out there about it. Alrighty, so now we're going to shift gears again, and this episode is kind of a hodgepodge of random things, but again, it's always, I think, for the benefit of other people. And so I kind of had two like things I was thinking about. Like, I think they're more so pet peeves of mine, but I think it's an interesting concept to just kind of discuss and have people think about. And keep in the back of your mind, because I'm sure that almost every person, including myself, has said one or two of these sentences I'm about to say. So the first one is when we ask people, oh, what do you do? Or what do you do for work? Very common question, standard. There's nothing wrong with asking someone what they do for a living, but at the same time, it's like, can we be a little more creative in that? Okay, so personally for me, like a lot of jobs I've had have been kind of circumstantial, and I don't always feel compelled to tell people exactly what I do because I don't even like what I do. It's temporary, it's just not something I prefer to associate or share about myself. And again, I don't know how many other people have felt this way. Can we stop asking people that? Like, it's just such like a mundane, boring question. Like, it's the same thing as talking about the weather to me. Like, oh, what do you do? Like, I literally cringe at that question now. So I just think we could ask like more creative, intellectual questions like, what are you passionate about? What are your interests? What do you like to do in your free time? I mean, and it's crazy because you'll probably get a different response than what somebody does. Like, to be honest, I don't give a shit what you do, and I'm sure you don't care about what I do, and most people's jobs are boring. Like, I don't care that you work with insurance or that you're an accountant or you do this. Like, and I'm not saying that you can't talk about what you do. If you're proud of your career, go ahead, talk about it. Like, I'm not saying to be ashamed of anything. I just think that we shouldn't use that as the default question all the time. Like, I just think there's so much more to know about a person other than what they do. And it's just that fallback question that I'm like, can we just not? Like, can we change that, please? So again, let's rephrase it. What do you like to do in your free time? What are your interests? What are you passionate about? I don't know. For me, I've started asking people when's your birthday because then I just want to know all about their sign and chart, and probably shouldn't do that, but whatever. So that's the first one. Second one is that really grinds my gears is when someone points out when someone's quiet, like in a room full of people. Why are you so quiet? Or this one over here is really quiet, or this one over here talks a lot. If that's your way of trying to make conversation, again, do better, because I just think that it's not cool. Like, instead of asking why someone is so quiet, maybe let's ask, why are you so loud? Why are you so loud and obnoxious? Like, it's kind of the same thing. What if I asked you that in front of a room full of people? Because just because someone's quiet doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Maybe you being too loud is actually the problem. So I just feel like, again, it's another thing that we need to be aware of and how it could make someone feel, because it's happened to me quite a few times because I can be more shy, reserved, introverted. That's just my personality. But I have a podcast. I'm a talker. I can talk about a lot of things. maybe I'm quiet because I don't want to talk to you. You're not making me feel comfortable enough that I want to talk to you. So like if you do want to talk to me, don't say that to get me to open up, because it's really not going to be the way to do that. Now you're just making me self-conscious. You're painting me as this shy, quiet person, and it's just, I just don't think it's cool. I think it can make people feel self-conscious. Just come over and have a conversation with me. You don't need to point out the fact that somebody is quiet. Like, and like I said, more often than not, they're probably quiet because you're too loud and they don't feel comfortable talking around you. So I just wanted to point those two things out because they're kind of, I don't know, just something I feel that needs to be the attention needs to be brought to that so people can be more aware of it going forward and do better, because sometimes we don't realize if we're offending someone, if we're being inappropriate, if we're overstepping boundaries. So that's another thing that I kind of wanted to lay out there. This is like a simple phrase, but I feel super important. The less you look for something, the sooner it will appear. And sometimes simple phrases like that just resonate. And I have found as time goes on that the less you stress about something and put pressure on it, the more it works out and the easier it comes into your life. And so that's kind of that like energy that I was talking about when you're putting pressure and, having anxiety or worrying, or like some things are just out of our control, and it's easier said than done. Trust me, like I'm someone who overthinks and worries all the time, but I've really had to tell myself, like, what is that doing in the end? Like, I don't know what the answer is going to be. I don't know when this will happen, or this is out of my control. So I'm really just wasting energy worrying when I could turn my attention to other things. And I have found more often than not, when I just kind of let go and let things happen, it just plays out so much more peacefully, easily. And I think that expressing gratitude is also really important. So we need to be thankful and reflect for everything we have instead of always wanting more. And I know that what I'm saying is going to mean so many different things for people depending what you're going through, but I know it's going to relate to at least one aspect of your life, which is why I'm discussing it. And also what I'm talking about is also really important for manifesting, and I think that's a concept that's kind of grown a lot too, this concept of putting out into the universe what you want and then hoping that it does materialize. And so I had talked briefly about vision boards in one of, I think it was my second episode, but I just want to like bring up how powerful they are. And so I actually have two in my room, and one I made, it was in February of 2020, like right before everything was happening with COVID. And so this vision board was vague. I really didn't have a lot of direction in my life at the time, and so I had just was sifting through magazines, finding images I liked and putting them on this vision board. So a lot of it was just like luxurious living, traveling, being in the city. So that was kind of the first one that I made. And then the second one was I had made about 6 months ago, and it was very specific. I just printed off pictures from the computer, and I was like, these are things I specifically want to manifest into my life. So I have two of them in my room, and what's crazy is like, yeah, I kind of see them every day, but I forget that they're there. Like, I'm not like staring at it like, oh my God, like I want this to happen to manifest this. I'm not putting the pressure on it. But what's the best feeling and so crazy is when I'm like laying in bed, or, all of a sudden I'll just kind of look at it and be like, oh my God, like something actually happened from my vision board. Like, it's just that light bulb goes off and you're like, wow, like I can't believe it. I didn't even realize I actually lived this experience that I was manifesting on this vision board. So seeing it visually and having it visually out there is so important in the manifesting process. Like, I can't recommend vision boards enough. And it's crazy because it happened to me twice in the last 6 months. Like, the first time, on one of them, I had a person holding like a tropical drink on the beach, and I had taken a picture almost so exact to that on Instagram when I was at the beach in Florida. And I didn't even realize me until months later. I was like, oh my God, like that actually happened. And I mean, if you follow me on Instagram, I was, got to experience being at the playpen for the first time in Chicago. And then I'm looking over at my vision board and I'm like, wow, I have pictures of boats and yachts on there. And the fact that I got to experience that this summer, which I never thought I would, was absolutely incredible. So I just, if you need a little bit of inspiration and want to manifest things in your life, highly, highly recommend vision boards. So I just needed to like add that in there because it's a really cool feeling. And now I kind of want to talk into another concept. So, well, it relates to what I was talking about before, this concept of letting go and trusting that things will work out. And it is such a vague concept, and I'm sure people are like, yeah, that's easier said than done. And it is, because we're conditioned to not think this way. Like, we're constantly anxious and living in the future and always planning and thinking, I must do this, things have to be this way. And there's this quote by Eckhart Tolle, and it says, most humans are never fully present in the now because unconsciously they believe that the next moment must be more important than this one, but that you miss your whole life, which is never not now. I could probably have it episodes solely on why it's so difficult to be present and why we need it more. I probably should just like start making notes for that episode now, because it's just so difficult for us as a society to really live by that, but it's just so important. Why is it so hard for us? Why are we always like for me it's been really hard because I always view life as linear, and I can't do that. Like, everything is such an ebb and flow. Tomorrow's never promised. It's great to have goals and plan, but at the same time we need to have those boundaries with just like being in the here and now. You are only in this moment. Nothing else exists. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist yet. Like, we only have today, and so we really need to like be grounded and anchor and be present more. And that is one thing that really feeds anxiety, is not being able to be present. So I've been trying to like meditate for at least 15 minutes every day, because that really does help with this concept of being present more. You start to become aware of your thoughts, and yoga is helpful with that too. I just felt like for the longest time I didn't feel like I was actually in the driver's seat of my own life. I naturally have an introverted, anxious personality, and I'm working on my self-esteem, so that concept was so far from my brain. And self-esteem and ego and will is associated with the solar plexus chakra, and so that's the third one. It's related to your stomach. It's yellow. The sun is really good for that chakra, but it's feeling in control and doing, not sitting back and waiting for permission or validation from others, doing what we think we're supposed to do, fear of judgment, and it just really controls your overall well-being. And so I just feel like we're always in this mode of like thinking why we can't do something, and not, being anxious, thinking we have to do this, just not really like living for ourselves. And so another quote I found is that it's important to realize that you are living inside one of your answered prayers while you wait for your next one. There's always a place for gratitude. That was from the Lightworkers Lounge, which is a spiritual account that I follow. And so this being present and expressing gratitude, because at one time, probably the phase of your life that you're in now, you had hoped for at one point in your life, and you just don't realize it because we're always thinking we have to be in the next phase, we have to want more. So again, just anchor yourself, be grounded, be present, be thankful. It really changes your mentality for the better. It's just a positive mindset to be in. And so the amount of people I know that can't sleep actually like concerns me. I just don't know why as a society we have trouble sleeping. Like, that's just a natural human behavior, yet I don't know, out of 10 people, probably 5 or 6 of them, over half, would say they have trouble falling asleep at night. One thing I wanted to bring up with that is when I was, so obviously summer's ending, but as someone who loves to be outside in the sun, like it's just so, I don't know how to explain it. Like, our bodies need sun. We need that vitamin D. It's so good for us in so many ways. And I remember the one day I was out on the boat in the sun all day, I was so tired after. Like, even though I was just sitting on the boat, like being out in the sun, it's like a plant. A plant needs sunlight. And so I got the best sleep. Like, remember when you were a little kid and you would play outside in the summer like all day, and parents probably loved it because you like burnt up all your energy and could just fall asleep as soon as your head hit the pillow. And so being active and being out in the sun and just moving your body, it helps with sleep so much. And I just got the best sleep of my life. I felt like a little kid again. I was like, man, I just wish more people could experience this. So I'm not saying being in the sun will cure your insomnia altogether, but I really, really think that it would help. And I mean, I was born with jaundice, so my liver was underdeveloped, but my mom sat with me in the sun for 12 hours. So again, it's an actual medicine. And I just really, obviously summer's ending now, but I just want to put it out there. We still have about a month left of good weather before winter and the cold weather sets in. So if you can get outside, please, please do. It has so many more benefits than you would think. Again, the sun is associated with the solar plexus chakra too. So just remember to be in the driver's seat of your life, to not sit back and wait, and just go outside and move your body and have fun and be present. Like I'm trying to link all these things in my mind together, but hopefully it makes sense to you. I woke up, it was around 4 a.m. and like I'm a really good sleeper. Like I am fortunate enough that I'm not someone that has trouble sleeping. And so I had 3 glasses of wine the night before. I woke up around 4 a.m. I felt horrible. My mouth was dry, my lips were dry. I didn't take my makeup off, my face was dry. I felt so horrible physically and mentally, and I was trying everything I could do to distract myself and fall back asleep. I couldn't. I just stayed up since 4 a.m. and I just was having really terrible, like dark, negative thoughts. And normally that's not me at all. Like, I'd say my mental state's pretty good. There were some personal things going on, kind of that compiled on top of each other. And I just woke up not in a good space at all. And I was just laying in my dark room having like the worst thoughts. Like, I am worthless. I'm a loser. You know, life is so much easier for everyone else. I'm never gonna, have a functional relationship again. Why is love like so much easier for other people? Just beating myself up essentially. And so I was like, listen, you are not gonna sit here and have a pity party and just be in this bad mental state. Like, we gotta change this. So decided again to be in the driver's seat of my life, and I started with simply just like chugging water. And I was already dehydrated, but I chugged water and ate a big meal, because sometimes we don't even realize like that we maybe just need food or a glass of water to make us feel better. And a lot of times we're so busy and on the go that we ignore those natural survival human instincts. So I drank water, I ate something. I felt like I just kind of needed to cry and release some emotions that were bottled up. And I can't tell you how good like a sob session or a good cry feels. It's extremely cathartic. I know it's not easy for everyone to cry, but sometimes just let it out. You know what I mean? Who cares? Crying is not a weakness. Crying is literally releasing negative toxins from your body. It's just a natural human response. I don't know, maybe some people would feel more comfortable crying in the shower because you're kind of more alone with your thoughts. That's why they say great ideas come in the shower. But also, you can picture the water kind of like wiping away those negative emotions and just everything you like. I'm crying and releasing and letting all of this wash away so it no longer sticks to me. So maybe a shower is going to be a good place for you to do that. And so after I ate something, had a good cry, I called my mom because I just needed to talk to someone. And I said, I think this is a whole other thing that I'm going to get into at some point. But sometimes when we need to vent, we're not asking for advice. We don't need someone to tell us how to feel, what to do, if we're wrong. We literally just need someone to be there to listen to us, validate our feelings, be a soundboard, and don't like emotional dump and expect someone to figure out all your problems, but just be like, hey, like I am going through something really challenging. I think saying it verbally out loud may help me with it. Can you lend an ear? Like, just phrase it like that. And more often than not, people are going to be fine with it. Like, yes, we all need someone to vent to sometimes. We all go through things. So, talking to someone you trust about it and just saying, like, I don't really need advice, I more so just need a vent, can be a good way to deal with those difficult emotions. I always talk about journaling. I'm a big journaler. So, if that is another good thing for you to do, I feel like a lot of people say they have trouble with starting to journal, like they're more concerned with their grammar or they feel stuck and need prompts. And like for me, it started with the concept of just writing a letter to someone and saying everything you would want to say, but not like actually saying it to them. Like again, it's like this way to release where you're in the non-judgmental space, and journaling is actually the best way to do that because you're are alone with your own thoughts, very private thoughts that you can release somewhere and actually get out and see. Literally just write everything that's bothering you. Like, I hate that I'm feeling this way because of X, Y, and Z. This person made me mad. I wish I could have said this. Like, it's whatever is bothering you. Just get it out on paper. Or, I like to journal on my laptop because my hand cramps up. If it's something so simple as in, like, this person made me really angry and I wish I would have said this, write it on a piece of paper and burn it, because then that way it's like that physical release of just getting it out there and then no longer having that thought. The thing I did was definitely, I was like, I need to exercise and move my body, because they say that exercise releases endorphins, which is actually the chemical in the brain associated with like killing pain. And so it was super hot and humid that day, but I just pushed myself. I'm like, even if it's 30 minutes. So I went for a bike ride and it did make me feel better. And then I rewarded myself by just laying out at the pool and again being present, sitting with the emotions, kind of going through everything in my head. And so after doing all of that, I was in a completely different headspace from then when the day started, just so down with negative thoughts, sitting in the dark, like beating myself up. And then, by the end of the day, I was like, wow, I totally was able to turn myself around and I did it all on my own. And there's everything I just listed are coping mechanisms to do that, and I talk about sometimes these unhealthy vices we have, and that's not judging because it's just everyone has them. Like I said, for me, it's junk food. And but, sometimes if we start with other things, then it can kind of make us not turn to the vices or engage in unhealthy behaviors if we are going through something difficult. So I just recommend eating something, those basic survival things, drinking water, venting to someone, journaling, getting exercise, being out in the sun, whatever you have to do. Even just cuddling a pet, like that's going to release those happy chemicals. Self-care, having ice cream, taking a bath, lighting a candle, like just do those little things. And that is part of self-care, is trying to like bring yourself out of, work through those emotions however you can, but more in like a healthy way, and just not letting yourself beat yourself up and get to that bad mental state, because we all do it, and I do it a lot, and I sometimes it just spirals, and then the next thing you know, we're in a horrible mood for the entire week. So just something else, a little tidbit that I wanted to put out there for people. Like I said, this episode was kind of a hodgepodge of topics, but I needed one that was coming back to myself, that was a solo episode where it's just me and you. I love having guests on. I mean, more often than not, I probably will, but this energy was calling me to just do one alone, and I let things with the podcast flow. I don't like any stress or negative energy to be associated with it, so whatever is meant to come through each episode comes through, whatever energy I'm feeling. That's just kind of the mode I'm in with the podcast. I want it to be very natural and flexible. I'm just glad that I had this one. It's been a while since I had one with just me. That was more low key, but again, it was the intimate conversations I had with you listeners out there. And I really can't express how thankful I am to have the support and that I actually like do this. It's only been 6 months, but sometimes I'm like, wow, I just still can't believe I have a podcast. And I still have my insecurities with it. There's hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, especially by celebrities. A lot of celebrities, it's a new thing for them to do to stay in the limelight. So there's a lot of competition out there. It's saturated. So why would someone want to listen to me? So I get it. But again, everything I've tried to do with this has been from a place of creativity and authenticity. And obviously I knew that I had to do something kind of different. But that's essentially, I try to emphasize my good intentions with it. And like I said, I have insecurities. There's been learning curves. Some of you have obviously maybe seen them along the way. I'm always open to constructive criticism, so it's a learning process. And you guys can hold me accountable and tell me to not be a hypocrite and be like, oh, well, you said this in episode 6, so like you need to take your own advice. This episode was a time to be present, reflect, and smell the roses along the way. Be mindful. Don't beat yourself up. Engage in self-care, be in the driver's seat of your own life. I equate it to a refresh, a walk in the park, watering the garden. And I had mentioned before, like I kind of listened back to all my previous episodes, so it really was a little bit of time for me to take a break and reflect even where I was at personally with the podcast. So as you know, it's a work in progress. I'm figuring it out as I go, but I still really can't thank all the people that have taken the time to listen. We all have really busy lives, and I'm grateful that you carve out a little bit of time to listen to me. And it just, like I've said several times, it feeds my soul. I have a lot more respect for creative artists and people, whether, I don't know, like before I would kind of see someone who would put something out there and like not really think anything of it. And now it's so different. Like I want people to engage more in their creative pursuits, and even if it's not up to society standards, who cares? Like I have a different appreciation for small businesses now. Like it's just, you see that passion and authenticity behind someone's project or what they're doing, and like after doing this I really feel that and relate to it more because it gives you such fulfillment. Like there's no way to describe it, nothing could ever replace it. And so I have gained that like fulfillment and feel purpose in helping others through this. So I don't know, not to get all deep, and all I can emphasize is to really try to enjoy this last bit of weather that we have while we're transitioning into fall, because we're in for a long winter. So take vitamin D supplements, exercise, get out in the sun, do yoga, have a good cry journal, take social media breaks, create a vision board, be in a body of water, remain present and grateful. Whatever self-care looks like to you, just do that. And I emphasize this because we tend to have a little bit more seasonal depression and funks going into winter. So if we can avoid that by doing certain things, I think that would be helpful. I know we're all going to get busier heading into fall. People are back in school. We're in our busy mode. And, I just hope that listening to this made your day a little bit brighter in some way. That's always my goal. So I'm sending love to all of you humans out there, and I can't wait until we meet again next time.